All right, so welcome everybody to this afternoon session. So I'm Samuel, I work for the ITST group at CERN, and I'm gonna give you a brief overview, a brief journey of what the year 2020 was for us and what the future is planning for us. So a brief overview of what we will see in the presentation is, as I said, a few notes on the numbers of this particular year on the service, the things that made it possible, and also what lies in front of us, and a glimpse to the future as the service vision and the summary of my presentation. So most of you already know CERNBOX, which is the Shinken share service for users at CERN. It's based on OnCloud, but it's also running alongside Riva to enable interoperability with other applications and integrations with different other things that we run in-house at CERN. But we in the ITST section, we run much more services, and we are also responsible, for instance, for integrations with applications like the OnlyOffice and Collabora suites, but also about introducing new integrations with different new applications like CodeMD. Apart from this, we also provide FuseX access to all our users. And this year, we also introduced a Samba service for Windows remote access. So brief overview of what happened. This year marks the 6th anniversary of CERNBOX in production at CERN. I think it was introduced at the CS3 conference in 2014. So happy birthday. We also consolidated the EOS user to EOS home migration, which was started in 2018. And it has been a tremendous effort from all our colleagues in the group. And as I mentioned, the new Samba service was introduced. But there's more about this in a session by my colleagues on the 27th. Also, we moved away from proprietary systems for backing up our users' files to a new system being REST. And we continue providing integrations with open source applications like the already mentioned OnlyOffice and Collabora code suites, and the commissioning or migrating the DFS user homes to CERNBOX. To give you an overview of this year's growth, these two graphics record basically the amount of new users that we got this year, which essentially reached more than 32,000 users registered in the system. This is explained by the DFS migration and the other migrations that I already mentioned, but also another KPI that we normally use to justify how the users interact and use our services, which is the number of file shares that they create between each other, which also augmented in a tremendous proportion. So this is not one of these maps that we're used to see this year about some virus propagation. This is more our user footprint along the world. So as you can see, we handle user access from a very distributed user base, but we also want to emphasize the importance of the desktop client access in this day-to-day access to their files, which represents more than 70% of the total. Apart from this, well, in this graph, we did not consider it, but there is also a huge amount of data that is being accessed through the FuseX mount points that we provide. So some big numbers about our use case. This year, we reached a rough number of 1.4 billion, this is American billions, of files stored at CERNBOX, which represent more or less 12 petabytes out of 19 of capacity. And also we ran an experiment to understand how the users use and interact our service. There will be a presentation tomorrow by Maria Landes, which I will recommend you to see, that explains these figures in better overview. But essentially, we understood better the ways the users interact with our service through different applications. Also, it's important to reflect a bit on what is keeping the lights on and what is making the service work on our day-to-day operations. So this year, for instance, we ran a hardware installation, training and decommissioning campaign that was removing and installing more than 40% of the total volume of our service, which was an impressive number. But also a tremendous number of upgrades were driven by different things, like, for instance, legal framework regulations, like we have mentioned. Apart from this, well, as I mentioned, the system operations are day-to-day jobs of putting fires out. So what's in for the future? What we want to have for 2021? So we want to consolidate our migration from OnCloud 10 to OSIS, as it was presented this morning, basically because it will bring us a number of improvements through the full stack. For instance, it will improve the user experience of how our users interact with the service tremendously, but also it will enable more open source integrations to support new use cases, like the CodeMD integration I already mentioned, but also SharePoint migration that will help us move away from proprietary systems. So there's more about this CodeMD integration, for instance, in the presentation that Giuseppe will give in a couple of days, that I will also recommend you to see. And the last couple of items that we want to tackle down during 2021 is to keep improving the EOS backend that runs and provide us with the storage for our services, to implement a new quality of service and transparent user migrations, but also keep on giving the site reliability, keep treating it as a first-class citizen. For instance, migrating from bare metal, which is our current infrastructure, to Kubernetes, and also introducing more points of tracing and monitoring across the whole thing. So what's the vision for 2013? We want CERNBOX, as we have already shared many times in this site report, to be the application hub and platform for CERN users, the place where CERN users go to find the access to different internal applications and services, which also provide them with easy access and integration with all their ecosystem. But we also want it to be interoperable, as we have already seen in sessions for this morning, with partner institutions and public clouds. And we will explain how we want to drive this interoperability in a session also next Wednesday, I think. And of course, always leveraging and contributing back to reliable open source software communities. So we want, in bold terms, we want CERNBOX to behave as your operating system. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Samuel, for this nice presentation. And I would propose to take the Q&A at the end of the session. Is it okay?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay, that's great.